sell to their constituents, whether it's a office building or like this medical center. But there is documented, they measure, and so there's documented savings. Gas usage has, people have said, saved $10,000, electric use $15,000 annually. So when you start putting these numbers to it, people start paying attention. In West Virginia, where I worked for a while, the departments of environment went around and helped people sort of measure where they were and then gave them strategies, all free of charge, to help reduce their energy consumption. And lo and behold, people started looking at their energy bills going, wow, I just saved money, and all I did was this, this, and this. So there's some low-hanging fruit that can be done. We're going to talk a little bit about it. An example of increased publicity is this Eco Lodge in Guyana that won Excellence in Sustainable Tourism Award. Of course, that gets blogged and put on Facebook and all over the place, and it brings increased interest into the business. And so we do see that as a possibility. There's different things to consider when considering the environmental piece of sustainability. You can create an environmental checklist, and we'll have an example of that for you posted up. People often look at the design and construction of a facility. Are you allowing for greatest airflow? A lot of tourism is in tropical areas, and we need to look at ways to cool things down and do it in an energy efficient way. We also look at the waste that we produce. And we also look at some of the issues with major waste outlets. So if you think about your operations, what are some of the major waste generators in your own operations? Just real quickly, just a couple of ideas. What are some major waste operators? What generates waste?
Well, in our areas, in the recreation areas, it's garbage.
Garbage.
Food from picnics.
Okay.
They bring packaging and stuff.
Yep. Yep. That's a big one.
Yeah.
Definitely a big one.
And sewage issues.
Sewage. Okay. Yep. Another one. Anything else?
Noise.
Noise. Yeah. And that's becoming harder and harder to mitigate, right? We've got all kinds of international flights coming into a lot of our destinations, and vehicle access to areas that haven't had vehicle access before. So, yeah. Okay. And if you think about these ideas, how could we reduce these ideas? When we think of waste or pollution production, we generally think of that as a negative thing. So how do we mitigate those ideas? One of the ideas is looking at, just want to go, I think I'm going to run out of time, so I want to go here. Is looking at sort of like when you say you've got a lot of garbage, you've got people coming in from the activities themselves. Oftentimes we look at where is that being started, and is there anything we can do as far as waste mitigation in the operation itself? I know a company here in the United States, in Orlando, it's SeaWorld. You probably heard of SeaWorld. I'm not a super big fan of SeaWorld. But SeaWorld has totally made a policy to not allow plastics anymore. So anything that they buy in SeaWorld, and it's big. I mean, if you think of the millions of people that go through that, they are a total ban on plastics. So they made a policy change to change the way they do business. And that's had a huge impact on one waste item that's pretty devastating to oceans. They looked at their supply chain and they decided to take action on one. Another way we can do it is we can measure. So what have we got? What's the problem? And how do we mitigate that? Oftentimes people do not measure what the issue is. So we don't know if what change that we made in our operation or in our policy has made a difference. So measuring becomes a pretty critical part. And then training employees. All of us need to get on board. Many organizations You know, they think it's a great idea and it's all up here in the management level, but does it really get down to the level of the person on the ground, and the person that has the interface either with the guests or is actually behind the scenes and making things happen. So integrating that in through employee training, and then talking about a culture and creating a culture within your team. And I'm going to talk just a little bit about that. One way that people create a culture for sustainability is to form a green team. And it's been quite successful in hotels. The green team can be headed by an accountant. The green team can be headed by any staff, but it actually gives them a different aspect to their job. And it makes coming to work a little bit more interesting because they have sort of a greater role to play in the organization. And oftentimes people in starting green teams will make sure that they pull somebody from maybe that does, that manages the parking lot, for example, or parking. But we want that person in there. We want to get that perspective. So when we think about all those different stakeholders we had at that level, you want to think about that in your own operation as well. So it could be everybody from the ticket deliverer to the hospitality staff that's cleaning rooms, to food and beverage, to your accounting team. Hotels, when they do that and the accounting teams get involved, they go, well, what's our biggest waste generator? Paper. Hordes and hordes of paper. How can we reduce that? Well, we can create a computer program. We can put these things online. We can store things. So you get to start to get ideas throughout your entire system. Yes?
I think a good system of incentives is very good also.
Yes. Yeah, and oftentimes different departments within an organization will either have a competition, a fund. You can make it a very fun thing. They'll have awards at the end of the year for the greatest accomplishment on one area. Some hotels, and I'm sure these guys can jump in on new ideas too, sort of take one thing and they say, okay, this year it's going to be water. We're going to manage water. We're going to look at water reduction. And they don't take it all on necessarily all at once, but they take something and they do it well. And making it or presenting it in manageable bites.
One of the schools that we visited in Peru, it's actually there's an association in Peru called ANIA, Asociación para Niñez y el Ambiente, Association for Childhood and the Environment. And this association, they support local schools so that they teach children to have to grow their own vegetables. So they have a space in the school that they use to put some soil, and they start to plant things, and they have some, growing their own tomatoes and potatoes and all that. And the teachers that they do the children, they have a system of points. So, at the end, the children at the end of the month, they get so many points, and then they get so many rewards at the end. So it's a stimulation, or it's like an incentive both for the adults and children, because you know that if you have something at the end, you get something at the end, then you go for that, and you work hard to get that. So,
yeah. No, it's a great example. And what we do in our own operation, I think, is we look at where are the problems. What's our biggest issue? And for us, illegal logging is a big issue. And how do we change the attitudes toward?
The mind is very, very difficult.
Yeah, it's
children and adults, very.
There you go. And kids that have open minds, and kids can actually influence parents, and that's what we're finding through these conservation programs for children. They're actually going home and say, hey, mom and dad, or mom and dad are going on the river trip with them, and they're learning just alongside the kids. So, I think there's a ton of ideas out there, and we'll, as we wrap up, we'll start to talk some more about those. So in creating this sort of sustainability policy, and policy is sort of that word that, policy, but so you can create any word you want there, but it's creating a system for managing environmental issues there, right? First you have to say, where are we at a baseline? So you would go around and you'd measure your waste output. You'd measure some of the primary issues that you're facing. You would say, okay, staffing-wise, we have 50 cars coming to here when, you know what, if we had a bus, we could pick everybody up in 10 seconds and bring them here. So you kind of look at where you are in all resource areas of your operation. The other big thing is to really get the buy-in of your groups. So whether it's your employees, your communities that you're working with, why is it important for them to buy into these ideas? And that has to be a very convincing argument. And hopefully you can go back to some of those benefits and actually show other examples where people have prospered because of those particular ideas. Then once you get that, you say, okay, what are we going to adhere to? How are we going to run our operation? And you start to develop your framework for your policy, and then you start to set goals. And in setting those goals, it's really important to take small chunks and, again, work on things that are probably the most detrimental to your organization's sustainability at the beginning. After you've started to implement those goals, then you can start to provide incentives. You can start to look at some of the benefits and how we're actually moving towards those goals and where we're saving money and how that helps the entire organization as it is. The thing people don't do is they'll set the goals maybe and say, oh, we're going to do this, but they never go back and measure again and find out where they are. So that baseline measurement at the beginning is very critical. If your goal is to develop 3 new partners to come visit your national park or national area, then you want to make sure what are our objectives? How are we actually going to get to that end game? Some of the ideas about measurement, what are the benefits of measurement, and I'll kind of quickly go through these. There's sort of 3 areas from the environmental side that we measure. One is water measurement. You've already mentioned solid waste as maybe being a potential problem, and then energy measurement. So these are the 3 critical areas that most tourism operations fall into. Sometimes this data can actually, by measuring, we can actually figure out, oh, well, there's just a leaky faucet, and we tend to sort of get down into the weeds and understand how a particular water system or waste management system might be happening, and we're able to sort of mitigate that somewhat. I think the measurement piece actually helps people understand where they are and where they want to go. And if you want to decrease waste by 50%, you can actually start heading towards that target. And it also helps you understand your current level of use. So if you're developing new programs and products adjacent to a national park, or maybe you're on a small island, you might want to understand the resources you actually have to work from. And there may be a capacity at which you reach, an ultimate capacity of visitor capacity at that point. And then it also helps you by measuring, saying, wow, we generate 20 tons of trash a year. It sort of tends to kind of pat you in the face a little bit and say, this looks like a potential problem. So without that measurement, I'm pretty much done. So people can do audits, and what we can do is put a couple of examples of audits up on our website for this particular thing, but there's all kinds of wonderful tools out there now that you can use to do your own audit. I'm going to pass out an audit. This handout, and again we use recycled paper, so don't read one side. Or if you can, get one. But basically in this, this goes through, and this helps you look at, it sort of takes the criteria that you have, the GST criteria, and then it asks you questions about, well, how would I implement a sustainable management system? And you might say, does the company have a sustainability management system structuring and documenting its commitment to operate in a sustainable manner? Do we have that? No. Okay, let's create one. So this will get you started on a path to creating a policy. So it goes through sustainable management systems, then it goes through the idea of an environmental management program, maximizing benefits to the community, So this is actually sort of a helpful evaluation tool on things that you could look at that would align very nicely with the GSDs. Okay, so I'll stop there because we have some wonderful folks coming up, and we'll move on.
Okay, let's move on. I'm not putting a PowerPoint up here. I'm just going to talk to you about what's going on, because Kelly covered a lot of stuff that I was going to touch upon. But I think my role, somehow through attrition and through elimination over the years, and certainly today, has been to discuss the pragmatic part of what we do in sustainability and how to make it work financially. I think a lot of us began as pioneers, in some cases, in sustainable tourism, ecotourism, as tree huggers. We were all hippies in some cases, or people who came from a background where they wanted to protect their village's culture, or various reasons. But we came in with the idea of saving the planet, and we had some good ideas. I think over the years, that feeling of wanting to save, conserve, and reuse and recycle is still with us, but we've become much more pragmatic and realistic about how to go about it. Because ultimately, when we get to the bottom of the day, if we're not making money, we're not surviving. And if we're not surviving, we can't go forward. And if we're not making money, we can't generate more money. It takes money to make money. And if we're not generating more money, we can't go through with programs or finance projects that hopefully would bring in even more money and at the same time help you move along the way. So for us, I think a majority of people, at least in Costa Rica, when we talk about sustainable tourism, we're talking about financial sustainability first and foremost. However, that is based on a kind of green technology-based implementation, which we use quite a lot. So what are the things that we use? And I wanted to give you a kind of a hands-on toolkit here. Rather than show you a bunch of pictures, I'm going to just talk about it, and we can have a discussion later about how this works within your own organization. The green technology basis that we use, and I'm going to use Costa Rica as a case study model here because obviously that's what I'm most familiar with, although I have traveled around the world and done a lot of work in other countries, from Bhutan to Australia to Brazil, etc. We use things to help us not only increase our efficiency in terms of a business, but also to add value to our business as a responsible entity. Give you some examples. In our swimming pools, many of us use a system called ionization, which reduces to zero the need for chemicals in the water, yet the cost of the equipment and the maintenance of it offers on an average size swimming pool anywhere from $4,000 to $8,000 a year in savings of not having to buy chemicals. What does this do? It allows you to fulfill the economic need to have an attribute of a hotel where people want to swim and enjoy the area where the swimming pool is, but to lower the maintenance costs tremendously. Also, the quality of the water is exceptional because there's no chemicals in it, so you have an added value of giving it an experience that's really incomparable. And in fact, in our case, because we take the low-key approach to advertising what we're doing in terms of sustainability, and because for us it is often primarily an economic stimulus for our own company, we don't necessarily announce with signs everywhere that we have ionization. We do have information in the rooms about it, but sometimes people don't read that. And when they come back from swimming in the pool, they'll say, "Wow, what is it about your water in your their swimming pool. It's like so different. I could open my eyes. Then we begin the training and education of our guests. Yes, you see, we don't use chemicals. We use recycled construction materials. This is an economic boon for us because roofing is one of the biggest problems we have in Costa Rica. And we're using roofing tiles that are made from recycled plastic banana bags. A company in Costa Rica decided that there was a lot of plastic going to waste in industrial uses and found it at a cheap price and started making things that people were always looking for, roofing tiles being one of them. And through their relationship with the private sector hotels business, we started telling them, you know what, if you could make it this color, and maybe, you know, the problem is they always look so new, so if you could sort of put in some stains or some moss-looking stuff on there, it would look a lot better. And over a period of time, through the relationship we established, we were able to create a product that was recyclable, reasonable in price, and very long-lived in terms of maintenance. Landscaping. We work with endemic species, which has a much lower maintenance cost because these are species that are used to being in the areas through thick and through thin, through dry and through wet, through problems in weather, through people walking on it, through animals treading through it.